Hey everybody, I'm Nigel, a realtor here in New York. And if you've been going back and forth about buying a home, you're thinking maybe you should wait or maybe prices will drop at some point in the future. We don't know when that's going to come. Then this video is for you, okay? Because let's be honest, this market has everybody at this point second guessing, right? You scroll online. One article says prices are crashing, right? Then another one says prices are going up, right? Mortgage rates are moving every other week, and it's a lot to keep track of, even for me. And I work in real estate. And meanwhile, you are trying to figure out, what makes sense for you. And so I want to make this video to try to clear some things up. I want to give you a very balanced kind of real world perspective. Not hype, not fear, just the truth, right? The truth about where things stand right now. About what's actually happening on the ground, and how to think about timing the market versus timing your life, right? So that being said, let's go ahead and let's start with what is actually really happening right now with real estate, right? So I'm from New York, right? So we're going to talk about New York a little bit here. Across Long Island, across Queens, across Nassau, Suffolk, and just across the nation in general, inventory is still tight, right? There simply just aren't enough homes for the amount of buyers that are out there who are looking, right? Now, yes, interest rates have cooled off from the highs, but they're still not back to where they were in 2021, right? I wish interest rates were back where they were in 2021, right? But prices they haven't crashed yet, right? Why? Because people are holding on to their homes, right? If you've got a 3% mortgage, you're not in a rush to sell, right? Some people got 2.5% mortgages, okay? They don't want to sell, and they might want to, but why? They can't, right? And that's what's keeping inventory low, which means listings. The new listings get attention fast, right? Especially the good ones, right? The good ones are flying over asking price here in New York, and I'm sure in a lot of other places in the country right now, right? You've probably seen it yourself, right? You tour a house, let's say in New York here, you tour a house in Massapequa or Hicksville, this happens very often, right? It hits the market by Friday, and then by Sunday, it's already got multiple offers. 60 people came to the open house, 55 offers, 100 grand over asking price, right? That's not a hot market headline. That's real life right now, right? This is something that we see, and we see this every single day. So when people say, I'll just wait for prices to drop, here's the question. What you're waiting for the prices to drop from what, right? We're not seeing that happen in most parts in New York here, right? In Long Island or Queens, right? Unless a home is just severely overpriced, or if it has major condition issues, or, there's just some crazy stuff going on with title and there's a bunch of violations, right? So let's talk about the mindset side of things. Buying a home is not really just a financial move. It's something that's going to be a lifestyle decision. So you're not just buying a property. What you're really buying is you're buying stability. So if you're renting right now, your rent is something that can go up next year, right? If you buy, your monthly payment doesn't, right? So that's you're locked in. That's your locked in cost of living right there. So let's say you're paying let's say you're paying $3,200 a month for rent, right? In New York, that's common, right? In a place like Forest Hills, or maybe $3,000 in Garden City, for a small apartment, right? This is not Georgia, or you guys are lucky out there, right? This is New York, though. You're already paying a mortgage, right? It's just somebody else's. And, I'm not saying that to push buying before you're ready, but what I am saying is if you're a long-term plan is to stay wherever you are, whether that's Georgia, California, Colorado, New York, Alaska, Hawaii, Texas, Florida, right? And you want to build equity, and you want to stop feeling like you're on the hamster wheel of rent increases. You really just got to start somewhere, right? And so here's another truth, right? Waiting can cost you in ways that aren't necessarily obvious immediately. Every time rates drop, the competition is also going to start to go up, right? So when the 30-year rate fell below 7% earlier in the spring around April, open houses were packed again, right? Buyers who thought they were being patient last year ended up being in a situation where they paid more this year, not because the prices skyrocketed, but because there were just more people, there was more competition, and just there were just more people in the game. So yes, you can wait, but I want you to understand you're not waiting for prices to fall. You're waiting for everyone else to jump back in at once, right? Because just like how you're waiting, everyone else who wants to buy a house is waiting too. So then you're all gonna jump in at the same time. So if you've ever tried to buy in places, when rates drop, you know what I mean? Let's say in New York, Plainview, Levittown, Bayside, you buy when rates drop, you're going to end up back in bidding wars, right? And that's not where you want to be. So let's look at it from another angle. Okay, let's look at it from, I always say this, lifestyle value, right? Because there's monetary value, right? And then there's lifestyle value. I always like to have that balance. There's this myth that buying a home only makes sense if prices are low. But life doesn't work like that. And this is just, I'm being completely honest here, right? Sometimes a real opportunity isn't about the market, it's about you. And I'm not trying to sound cliche, I'm not trying to be woo-woo and kumbaya, but it's true. I know it sounds cliche, right? Maybe you're outgrowing your apartment. Maybe you want a yard for your dog, or, for your kids, or maybe you want to start building equity instead of just writing, that monthly rental check to your landlord every day. These are real life things, and, life is short, right? And I know this is very cliche, but, in other words, the right time to buy isn't always going to be when CNBC tells you to, when it makes the most financial sense. It's going to be really when it lines up with your life. Maybe you just want to buy a house, right? And I mean, I'm not saying go underwater and destroy your life if you can't afford it. But, honestly, those personal reasons, things like space, things like comfort, stability, those end up being what people really value the most, right? Sometimes it might be worth overpaying a little bit for a house if it's something that's really going to change your life, right? Now, no one I've helped buy a home has ever said, man, I wish I waited 2 years for the market to maybe go down a few percent, but what I do hear people say is, I wish I bought sooner, before things got even more competitive, right? So these are things to really consider. So I know what you're thinking, right? What if rates drop later on this year? And, that's actually fine. 100% fine. You can always refinance later, but, what you can't do is go back in time, and you can't buy a home at today's prices, if they keep rising, right? And I mean, the prices are rising. They're going up. They keep going up. There's a saying in real estate that's very cliche, but it's true, right? I know. I hate saying this, but it's true. It's true. It really is true. Marry the house, date the rate, right? I know you hear this all the time. But, buy the home you want, and when rates come down, refinance. It's true. As cliche as it is. That's exactly what we saw happen with buyers who purchased last year. Some of them already dropped their monthly payment by refinancing. This year, this spring, they've already done it. They bought the crazy rate, and rates dropped and they refinanced, and now they're saving, catching a little break on their mortgage. Meanwhile, people who waited are now paying 20, 30,000 more, for the same house because those prices are going up, the competition's up, and there's bidding wars everywhere, especially on good properties. So now let's be real, right? There are still pros and cons to buying right now. So I'm not here to sugarcoat that. You've just really got to be prepared, right? Down payments are tougher with today's prices. Closing costs often surprise a lot of people. They still surprise me to this day when I see them. But and the monthly numbers, they matter, right? You need to buy something that you can comfortably afford. You don't want to be house poor, right? You got to be able to afford it. That's step number one. Okay, you don't want to put yourself in a position that's going to stretch you too thin, right? One thing that I always do, I tell my clients all the time, the goal isn't to buy a home, it's to buy a home that you can keep, right? Why you want to buy a home and then your house forecloses a couple years later, right? We don't want that. If the numbers don't work right now, that's okay. Okay, use this time to get your credit up. Save more aggressively, budget. Cut back on buying some crazy things, right? And stay plugged into the market so that when the opportunity is right, when the right opportunity hits, then you're ready to make your move, right? So the biggest mistake isn't waiting, right? This is my opinion here, right? My opinion. But it's waiting without preparing, right? And I think you definitely gotta prepare. So let me give you a few few local examples to put this in perspective, using examples here in New York, right? In Nassau County, which is in Long Island, New York, homes in areas like Massapequa and Wantagh and Seaford, that used to sit in the market for 45 to 60 days are now moving in 10 to 15 if they're priced right. I saw a home the other day that moved in 4 days. 4 days this home was on the market, and it's not uncommon to see that, right? In Suffolk County, New York, places such as Patchogue and Bayshore have seen a steady demand, right? Because of the downtowns and the proximity to the water, right? So even when rates jumped, those markets barely slowed, because the lifestyle driven buyers, they kept coming, right? So sometimes people get it in their mind that buying real estate is all about finances, and I'm a finance guy. I'm all about finances, but sometimes it's really about life, right? If you're ready to buy a house and you want a house, buy one, right? If you look at a place in Queens, New York, right, like spots like Whitestone or Bayside or Forest Hills, they're still competitive to this day. Buyers want convenience. They want that convenience to Manhattan, to the city life, with that little bit of a suburban edge, right? And that combo, suburban life mixed with being close to the nightlife in New York City is still very solid. People want that. So while national headlines talk about cooling, right? Locally, we're not really seeing that slowdown. I'm sure it's similar wherever you are, right? Maybe a place like in Atlanta is still hot, right? Or Charlotte, right? Or LA, right? People still want to be there. Buyers are just being more selective, but when they see value, they move fast. So here's what, I would like to leave you with, okay? Buying a home is not about perfect timing. It's really going to be about positioning yourself for the life of your dreams, okay? For the life that you want, and really just building something long term. So it's not always about numbers all the time. Pay attention to the numbers. Don't become house poor. Don't make terrible financial decisions. But, if you're ready to buy a house and you want to buy a house and you want to buy one for your family, then do it, right? If you're sitting there wondering if you should buy this year or next, I would ask you, are you trying to time the market, or are you trying to time your next chapter in your life? Okay? Because the market shifts, right? But your needs, your values, your family, your space, your stability, your dreams, those matter more. I know that sounds cliche, but don't make decisions, out of fear, okay? Make them out of clarity, right? Make them from planning. run your numbers, get pre-approved, okay? Talk to your lender, all right? And know exactly what buying power looks like. Very, very important. Then, when the right home pops up, the dream home that you see that this home I want, I've always wanted this home, then you're ready, right? No hesitation, no regret. You can buy your house, and then, you can move on with your life and live the life of your dreams, right? At the end of the day, nobody can predict the market, right? I come from a finance background. You can't predict what the stock market, the Forex, the exchange market, can't predict what this is going to do. But what you can control is your timing, right? You can control your preparation and your plan. So if you've been on the fence, this is your reminder to get the facts, get clear on your goals, and really stop letting, those what ifs hold you back, right? You might be much closer to owning a home than you think, okay? So I really want you to leave with that. Think about that. If this video helps you, hit that like button down below. Subscribe, for more real estate content, local real estate breakdowns, national real estate advice, and drop a comment down below. Let me know what's holding you back from buying right now, okay? And I will respond personally. I look forward to connecting with you all. If you have any video requests, let me know down below. And, maybe I'll look to make a video on that topic if I see it's something a lot of people are asking for. So thanks for watching. If you're looking for a realtor in New York, all my information is down below. And I will see you in the next video. Take care.